Welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Dave Brinker. Today we have an awesome songwriter, musician, great man. I'm inspired by his story. Logan Mize, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, bud.
And I think he's out in Kansas today because he's always out in Kansas, it seems like.
I am. I'm here at my studio in Annandale, Kansas. It's population 900.
Love it.
I got a little place right here on Main Street, so I can kind of see everyone buzzing through during the day, hitting the cafe, and the farmers coming through to the co-op. It's kind of fun. You kind of feel like you're part of the community when I'm down here working, rather than being in my basement at home. So it's really fun.
I love that, man. I live in a town of 1,000 people, and
oh heck yeah!
I keep telling my wife, I'm like, even this is just a little too big. I'd like it even a little smaller. I love being able to walk down to the general store and like go to little parades in the summertime and just quiet and safe. And I don't know. I think you and I are just rural small town dudes, right?
So where are you at?
I'm out in Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah. I live kind of in the wine country of Oregon, like the farm country. I grew up out here.
Okay, very cool.
I've lived in Montana and California and all over the places too.
Yeah, so I saw a tag, I think on, maybe it was your email. It said something, was there a Brooklyn or something on there, or did I get that wrong? I don't know where I saw that. Oh, maybe it said Bozeman and I scanned right past it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bozeman. So I lived in Bozeman for I guess, I don't know, 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. I can't remember. Something like that.
Yeah.
And I guess 2 of my kids were born there, and a lot of my great friends are there still. So I travel there. I'm also a part owner in a business out there. So I travel there about once a quarter. So I guess I call it my second home. I love Montana. I didn't really want to leave that much, but because our whole family is in Oregon, and we kind of wanted the kids to know their grandparents, and it sounds like you have pretty deep roots where you are as well.
Yeah, I do. So I lived in Nashville for 13 years, I think, but I met my wife there. She's from Kansas. I'm from a town about 30 minutes south of here where I'm at now. I'm in her hometown.
Okay.
Our towns played each other in sports growing up. I knew a lot of her friends, her cousins and whatnot. So I still get to see my buddies I grew up with. And when I started traveling a lot, it just made more sense to be here, around family. So she had support with the kids.
Man.
And so it's worked out great, and I love living in a small town.
So I want to kind of start from the beginning of your story, the way I understand it. But obviously, you grew up in Kansas, and you had a couple prominent musicians in your family, right?
I did, but I didn't know about either of them at all. They're brothers. It's Bucky Mize and Billy Mize, and Buddy is the one who started the NSAIA.
No way.
Songwriter. I think him and a group of buddies, including like Chris Christopherson and them, were part of starting that NSAIA.
Wow.
And then he was primarily in Nashville most of the time. They grew up in California. They grew up in Bakersfield. And
Can you explain what the NSAI, what'd you say it was?
The NSAI, I guess. Nashville Songwriters Association. I'm not good at background.
Nashville. I was a member of it for several years, but it's basically a songwriters association. Has learning opportunities, growth opportunities for songwriters, but also kind of fights for the songwriter. Correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And I never dealt with them much. I always knew that they had open songwriting rooms and stuff. Being a young songwriter, moving there, not really knowing much, I did kind of hear a lot about that, and never used any of their writing rooms, but they've always been a big advocate for songwriters. So
that's rad, man. So you didn't even know about them in your childhood?
I didn't. They're my grandfather's first cousins, and so when I got into the music business, I grew up in a small town, Clearwater, Kansas, and I went to college for a couple of years. Really wasn't for me. I didn't have much luck. I just wasn't a good student. I think now I would be, but when I was 18 years old, I wasn't. And so, but songs were the one thing that I always just loved. Didn't matter the genre. I just had a fascination with music from an early age. And I went out to Nashville and never really had the conversation with my grandfather about, he owned a grocery store in Clearwater, the town I grew up. And a few years into it, I got a call from his first cousin, Billy, his people. And it was Billy Mize's 80th birthday party in Bakersfield at the Buck Owens Crystal Palace. And I mentioned it to my grandpa. He's like, "Oh, I never even thought to tell you. Yeah, I have, my cousins are in the music business. They always have been." And when he got out of World War II, he actually went out to California on his way, I think to Oregon. He wanted to be a logger, and he stayed with him for a couple of weeks. And I think there was all sorts of characters running around out there. This is I want to say this is in the 50s, late 50s. And it was, Buddy was out there writing with Johnny Cash, and Billy had, he hosted several, Gene Autry's Melody Ranch, I think, was one of them. He had a radio show in Bakersfield. He had a radio show in LA. And so he was kind of a host. He was a songwriter. And Billy, Buddy's brother, it was him and Cliff Crawford who started the ACMs. So the Academy of Country Music Awards. Right. So I didn't know any of this. I felt really dumb. And my grandpa he's just one of those guys. He was head down in his grocery business and never thought to tell me. I don't think he thought much of it. He listened to like Ray Price, and he listened to Patsy Cline. He was into country music, but it just wasn't anything that registered with him. So how
did you pick up a guitar? Like what gave you the inspiration to start even writing songs or playing music?
I don't know. It was just always there. I always loved the idea of it. I started playing piano around age 7, and I wasn't really that good. I wasn't like I said, I wasn't a good student. So I'd start to practice what I was supposed to practice, and then I would just kind of see how chords fit together, and then I'd be off on my own thing trying to piece that together. And I did a few piano recitals and kind of put it away when I was about 12 or 13. I was heavy into sports. And then when I was about 16 or 17 is when, there was always guitars around. My grandfather on my mom's side always had guitars. And so I was always piddling with them. And I guess at some point I decided to string some chords together. And I wrote poetry a lot. So it was kind of like, maybe I can write a song. And so I started trying.
And when you first started trying, who were your early influences? Like, who were you trying to, because usually when people start, at least for me, when I started songwriting, I'm like, all right, first I got to figure out what the hell my voice is. Right. So I started to copy people that I thought I sounded like, even though I didn't. And it was like this experience of like trying to find out who the hell you are. If I'm going to write a song, what's it going to be? Like, I don't even know what genre I am, So for you, who was that and how did you start?
Man, I was really into Elton John as a kid. My dad was a huge Elton John fan, and he had this Jeep Comanche, and it had a tape player in it. And every day on the way to school, we lived like 7 miles south of the town I went to school in. So we'd cruise dirt roads on the way to town, listening to Elton John, Tumbleweed Connection, Madman Across the Water. And I just loved it. I had certain songs that I loved. And then he was into Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. So a lot of Mr. Bojangles and, House at Pooh Corner, that kind of stuff. I didn't know that those were covers. I just thought, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. But I was into that. So kind of a mix of some pop, some country, heartland rock type stuff, Mellencamp. But like mainstream, like Nashville country was never anything that was played growing up. So I kind of discovered country radio on my own, maybe when I was like 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. And it struck me because it was like, this sounds more like what I'm growing up around. It made a little more sense. And that's how I kind of dove into country. So there was a mix of all that when I started writing. And I kind of had a fascination with Western type of, rustic Western type lyrics. And so the first songs I wrote, I think, were very Western inspired. I think the first song I finished was a song called Broken Outlaw. And I wouldn't play it for anybody. It was terrible. But I put it on a little CD. I recorded it, I think, when I was 18, and the guitar was out of tune, and I printed off, burned a bunch of CDs on my parents' computer and gave it to my friends, and people liked it, so it gave me confidence. And
at the time, you thought it was the greatest thing ever recorded.
Oh, I thought it was great. Yeah. And I had tons of confidence because people liked it. So I got to where I had 4 songs, and I would go to like, I was living in Illinois at that point. I had moved from Kansas to Illinois. I was going to school there, and there was little bars around Southern Illinois, around Carbondale, Anna, Illinois, places like that. I would go to the bars there and just sit on the bar and play songs for the patrons there. And that's kind of what gave me the confidence and gave me the bug to start performing. So it all came pretty, it wasn't something I premeditated. It just was something I loved, and it kind of evolved on its own.
Are you a introverted, extroverted guy? Like a little bit of both?
Probably like 55% introverted, and the rest, I can flip a switch and be extroverted. I still, I still have some social anxieties where, if you gave me a choice, would you rather be in a crowd or in front of a bunch of people, or would you rather be in a room by yourself thinking on your own? I'd rather pick that, but I can enjoy both. I love a mixture of both of them.
Yeah, it's weird because I think I'm pretty similar. Like how it drains me to be around a bunch of people, but like if I'm playing a show or just doing whatever around a bunch of people, I can do it and I really, really enjoy it, but I have to have a break afterwards for a certain amount of time where it's like I'm just staring at a wall or like, taking a nap or whatever. But I think that's pretty common in musicians, because in order to be a great writer, you have to have some introversion, because you got to like really look inside yourself and really dig in there. Right. Be alone, or maybe with just a couple select people or whatever. But, so you started realizing that you really get energy from these performances. You start writing a few more songs, things progress a little bit. You're not a great student, which I can also relate to. What point did you decide, screw it, man, I'm going to go to this place, Nashville?
Well, I kind of figured it out about my second year in Illinois. I was writing songs and playing there. Nashville seemed like a pipe dream. It seemed like something that was cool, but I had other things I enjoyed too. And so I didn't really know where I was going to land. It wasn't until I came back home to Kansas and did like this, trying to remember what it's called. I think it was the Colgate Country Showdown. And you got to show up and you got to sing a cover song. They have a house band. And I think I was confused at the time. I loved writing songs. I loved performing my songs. And then I got to the way I got into the showdown was I sent a CD in, probably that original CD that had some songs I wrote on it. And I got called, made the top 12 in Kansas, and then had to do a cover song. And I realized the second I got on stage, I hated that. I didn't want to go sing a Tim McGraw song with judges, and something felt weird about that to me. I didn't like it. So I was confused about the whole thing and how it worked. And I didn't know, well, maybe I'm just a songwriter, or do I like performing? I didn't know. It wasn't the same enjoyment that I got out of performing something I'd written. And I learned to navigate that. It took a while, but when I was there, I met a friend who said, hey, there's this thing in Nashville called the Bluebird, and they have open mic nights every Monday. And I got back to Illinois to school and looked, I'm only 3 hours from Nashville. I'll drive down on Monday and I'll play an open mic. And then that was a completely different experience, because then I was trying to write as many songs as I could so that I could pick my best 2. And then I'd wait in line every Monday to get up and play my 2 songs. And that's when I really was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I met other songwriters that I clicked with. And then it was like, I'm going to move to Nashville. I don't know how to pull the trigger. This is so different than anything any of my friends are doing, my parents are doing. So I felt a little bit like an alien. I didn't know how to, communicate to, especially my parents, that that's what I wanted to do. So, but I still dropped out of school, quit the football team. And I was like, well, I'm going to go back to Kansas and I'm going to work and save money to move to Nashville. And really what it was putting off the fact that I was scared, And so I framed houses in Wichita for about 8 months until I got sick of myself, showing up every day, 5 o'clock in the morning, going, I know what I need to be doing. And so one day I quit my framing job and packed my truck, and didn't have much, didn't have much money, or anything saved up. Drove to Nashville, knew one guy there, and crashed in his apartment. And just
dude, how powerful. For those that don't know what the Bluebird Cafe is, I'm sure a lot of my audience does, but if you don't, it's this little spot, and I say little, it's not very big, and it's kind of tucked away in the most random like strip mall on the outskirts of Nashville. But it's this really, if you're a songwriter, it's like, I don't know what you call it, but it's like legendary. All the greatest songwriters have played there and still do play there. Almost every night they have amazing shows. And what it is it's this place where you actually go sit. It's actually a listening room in Nashville. A lot of the country, as you know, Logan, they don't know this concept, right? They go to the bar, they drink, and they talk loud with their friends, and there's music in the background, and maybe they're singing along, but they're not really listening. In Nashville and a few other places, there's actually these places where you go and you actually are supposed to shut up and listen to the songs and listen to the lyrics, because these writers have put their heart and soul into it. And when you go there, literally, there's no chair that doesn't face this, or they put the songwriters in the round in the middle of the room. They turn off all the lights. Everybody's quiet. You can eat and drink or whatever, but you're quiet. And the songwriters tell the stories of their songs and how they came about. And one of the best experiences of my entire life musically was the first time I went there. I read about it just like you did online. I'm like, dude, I'm a songwriter. I should know about this place. So I was in Nashville. I went there with my dad, and I can't remember what song it was now, because it was a long time ago, but I'll never forget. The songwriter's like, all right, I'd never heard of this guy. He's like, I wrote this, for Garth Brooks. And then he sings this song, and it was amazing, right? I'm like, what in the hell? Garth didn't write that? It's like, so I had this moment where I realized that most of the songs you hear, not necessarily from Garth, but like from most of the artists that you're hearing from, somebody else wrote the song. And what you're hearing at the Bluebird Cafe is those original versions coming straight from the songwriter's mouth, and they tell you the story. So if you guys are ever in Nashville and you want to see an amazing spectacle, go there. And then what Logan was mentioning, they have an open mic night once a week. I still think they do this, where you can sign up. Well, you just show up. It's like first come, first serve, I think, or maybe you sign up. I can't remember. I've only done it once, but and anybody can come play on that same microphone. And the night that I went, I saw a couple really famous songwriters there, like watching these amateurs, and it was really, really cool. So I can only imagine, like, that's a really cool story, man. That just going there that first time, you're like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was huge. And that moment that I finally got over my fear and just let go of everything and drove, I'm sure everyone in my family is like, what is he doing? And I think I was thinking the same thing. But once I got there, I was just like, okay, I need a way to make money. And the one good thing I did in college was there was a class offered to get your commercial driver's license, and it was 2 weeks long, and you had to go sit in the class. You took the test, and then they had a semi sitting out there. I did my semi driving test, which I was somewhat familiar with that sort of equipment, passed that. And then when I got to Nashville, I hadn't used that skill hardly at all. When I was in Illinois, I drove a truck for a farmer out there, farmer excavator type. And so I was able to get a job within like 3 days doing that. So I'd work 7 to 4. And then at 4 o'clock, I'd get off. I'd drive straight downtown, find an open mic night, stay out till 11 or 12, hitting every single one of those I could, go home, do it all again the next day. I did that for months and months.
Wow. And you probably met important people in your life at the time at those, because that's usually those open mics are a great networking opportunity for new songwriters to meet people maybe they write with, maybe they just become friends with, maybe it leads to a publishing deal or a record deal, or you just never know who you're meeting. So that you play your songs, but then you go sit in the crowd with the other songwriters and drink a beer or two and meet people, right?
Yeah, it was great. I met a guy from Louisiana. His name's Will Vance. He has a band down in New Orleans, but he was in Nashville at the time, and he'd been playing in bands forever. I'd never been in a band. I'd never played with a band other than maybe like screwing around at a high school party, playing a Limp Bizkit song or something, So he was like, I want to put a band together. We should be in a band. I'm like, I would love that. I need that experience. So we got I guess it was, you'd call it a storage space. It was just a little, you lift up the door, you had the band equipment set up in there. We rounded up some other people we met. So this guy can play bass, this guy can play drums, whatever. And we set up and we just started rehearsing songs. We'd bring in songs we wrote, make arrangements for them. And so it was like a crash course on here's how you write it, here's how you put the band together, and here's how and making every mistake along the way, right? And, we got a few gigs and we weren't very good. And it was just learning on the fly.
Yeah, but you think you're good. So it's like, I think in music or just about anything, like in the beginning stages, you have to be ignorant. Otherwise, if you realized how bad you were, then you wouldn't do it. You'd be embarrassed. Right. So you almost have to have this like stupid ignorance of like, this, dude, we sound so good. We could go on tour right now, check out this Limp Bizkit song.
Yeah, that is 100% true, man. There are days that I wish I had that blind, ignorant confidence that I had at 20, 21 years old, where, my first publishing deal, I didn't know what a publishing company even was. I just had met a guy. He's like, hey, I'm looking for songwriters for this songwriter who has a publishing company. Do you want to come play in his office? Sure. I don't know what that means, but I'll come play in his office. Went in there, played some terrible song I probably had written, and had so much confidence in myself. Wasn't nervous. And I got a publishing deal. My first publishing deal came that way. And I really didn't know what I was doing. Nowadays, you ask me to walk into a room and play an acoustic guitar for somebody who I respect and think is good, I'm going to be a little bit nervous. I'm going to be self-conscious. Don't be pitchy. Get your phrasing right. Make sure your guitar's in tune. None of that even mattered to me back then. It was like, here I am. Let's go.
Yeah, man. I agree with you. It's a beautiful thing. And my daughter is a perfectionist, and she gets really good at new things, but then she starts hitting that plateau where she starts over critiquing herself, and then she wants to quit. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I just want to try that, because I wasn't like that. I was kind of dumb. Like I wasn't smart enough to know that I was bad at anything. I was like, this is the whole world's exciting. I'm good at all these things. It's like, and it helps you kind of push past that initial phase, especially in music, man. God, can you imagine if you could go back and sit in a room and listen to yourself in some of those first open mics now with what you know? You'd be like, dude, stop.
Yeah, go do something. Go back to framing houses, man.
Yeah. But that's just part of the ugly process of especially music, but any creative endeavor, right?
Right. I think so. It's a good thing. I don't know if it's just your body or your brain kind of shutting that part off of the self-critiquing just so you can get through that initial phase of learning something new. But I think, speaking about your daughter, like hitting that plateau of where do I go from here? I think that's never ending. I still hit that all the time where I'm going, okay, where do I need to start to get better, learn something new? Mm-hmm. Because the second you get comfortable and say, all right, I'm good. I'm going to stop learning now. That's when, it's over.
What do you do now though? And I want to get back to kind of where we were in your story, but I'm just curious because you at this point, you've written hundreds or thousands of songs. You've toured for years. You've done all these great things. Your songs are I love your music, man.
Oh, thanks, man.
How do you challenge yourself though? Like, do you try to learn some weird jazzy chord on your guitar, or do you try to, write a different genre? Like what are those things you can do to challenge yourself at that stage?
I do that. I'll try to learn new chords. Right now I'm trying to, my latest project has been trying to learn as many Elton John songs on the piano as I can, and really accompany myself and be able to get around on the piano. And it was another thing I did. I had never played piano in front of anybody, like besides a young recital. And last year I built a piano shell, got a Roland 2000, stuck it in there, took it on the road, and forced myself to make part of my set me on the piano singing.
No way.
And yeah, just little things like that. Like I really want to play piano in my set. I really want to be able to do it. proficiently and sound good. And those first few times were super awkward. I didn't know what to do. I'm used to standing at the mic with a guitar or whatever. And so little things like that. I have a drum kit at the house. I'll go down and play that and try to learn songs outside of the genre I'm used to playing in. But it's easy to get stuck, and the little things like that where you push yourself out of your comfort zone, I think, are important.
Did you post a cover of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road at some point?
I think it was your song.
Oh yeah. You're right,
yeah.
Dude. That when I saw that, because I love Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road is one of my favorite songs of all time.
Yeah, so good.
And I'm right now in the middle of teaching myself piano. I mean, when I minored in music in college, and there's pianos in like our little break rooms or whatever. And I can play enough chords to like write a song or whatever, but actually performing on the piano, I have not yet conquered. So anyways, I got a keyboard about a year ago, and I've been digging around with it. And my goal is to perform some stuff on the piano too. Anyways, when you posted that, I'm like, I'm going to try to learn Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And the cool thing about Elton John, if you're a musician, is the guy, like, you could, and Logan, I think you can probably agree with me. Like, if you or I listens to country radio, I can pretty much play any song that I hear within a few minutes, because they're just, the structures are similar. The chords aren't super complicated. An Elton John song, he's moving in and out of different keys and all kinds of crazy nonsense that's amazing and beautiful. But if you actually sit there and try to learn it, it like stretches your brain beyond imagination, right?
It really does, man.
Which is awesome.
There's certain part, like some of his songs, just seeing how he layers the bottom end over the top end with the different chord, structures, and it's totally different than, you're right, trying to play, a standard, pop country song off the radio. It really does stretch your brain. And I was learning one the other day, and I felt like I sat there with the intro for 3 hours, just slow motion, play this, and I felt so dumb,
Right. Well, that's kind of his brilliance. So you're in Nashville. Excuse me. You're in Nashville, and you get your publishing deal. What do they ask of you? How many, like, do you got to write a certain number of songs? What was the process?
So I had been through several just dead end jobs, and I don't want to say dead end. They were a means to an end. The goal was do music full time. I didn't know what that looked like, but it was just the truck driving thing. I drove a party bus for a while. I did a lot of lawn care type stuff.
Yeah.
I was a security guard at Coyote Ugly for a while. All those are very short lived, but this guy that I met, he's like, hey, I'm going to pay you $16,000 a year, and that's your publishing draw. And, but you got to quit your other jobs. You got to come here and write every day. We'll schedule your co-writes. You're here learning songwriting. I wrote with him a ton, probably 2 or 3 times a week. Brett Jones is his name. He wrote, You Won't Ever Be Lonely for Andy Griggs. He wrote, That's How Country Boys Roll for Billy Currington, Little Past Little Rock for Leann Womack. He was kind of my songwriter I really looked up to. So I learned a lot from him. And it was really cool. First of all, $16,000 a year, 2007. I was like, what am I going to do with all this money? I don't even know. I had a Suburban, like an old used Suburban, and I had my rent, and that was it. Maybe some insurance or whatever. But it was just having fun every day, writing songs, playing with my band. The house I lived in, the whole living room was just a band set up with sound equipment, and I would get done writing, go home, call the band over. We'd play till midnight. That was just every day. It was just wake up, write songs, learn songs, whatever.
So they expected you to quit everything for $16,000 a year? Like you couldn't?
It was one of his requests. He was like, hey, I want you to be here every day.
Yeah.
You need to quit doing that, driving stuff. It's taking too much time if you really want to do this. And I'm not saying I 100% agree with that method. I'm not recommending it to anybody, but for me, it was I'm glad he did that because it just forced me to buckle down, and the money thing wasn't an issue. Like I said, I had nothing to pay for really.
Right.
So, yeah.
God, to have those days again when we could survive off 16 grand.
I know. Right?
So you immerse yourself in the process, you probably get exponentially better pretty quickly, right? If you write 5 days a week, you're going to get better.
Yeah, that year was huge for me. I think it was really a big learning year. And I was still young, I was 20, 21, 22. So learned a lot, was out playing with my band as many nights as I could. We took
Was that a cover band?
We did covers. We went and played on Broadway sometimes. And then I had an entire set of originals, 12 songs or so, and that we would take road gigs. I actually I didn't have a booking agent or anything, but I made up this agent. She had her email, and I would email clubs and stuff if I saw somebody that didn't have an opener. Like, I think the first one I did it was Pat Green was playing in Lawrence, Kansas, and I emailed the club owner and I said, "Hey, we got this band we're booking." I wasn't Logan Mize at the time. We had a band name. And
the Altitude Show is brought to you by Peaks Equipment, the world's leading technical, hard goods, and accessories brand for backcountry enthusiasts. From trekking poles to headlamps to best-in-class skaters, Peaks delivers a system of products that work to achieve optimal performance in the harshest conditions. Don't suffer on your hunting adventures. Peaks enables you to thrive on the mountain when everyone else is going home. Visit peaksequipment.com and use code ALTITUDE for 10% off today. That's Altitude for 10% off on peaksequipment.com.
We were trying to get them on the road. He said, yeah, $150. So loaded the Suburban, drove from Nashville to Lawrence, played our first gig. And then it was just, I don't know, it was magical. I'm sure it wasn't good, but man, it was so fun. And from there it just escalated and kept getting more shows and losing band members and have to find new ones. And,
Now, were you at that point in your story, were you pursuing a record deal? Is that what you wanted? Did you want to be famous and the lead guy and all that?
As a young kid, I think the idea of being a big star was cool. That changed pretty quick. I can't remember when or what happened. There was a shift, and the deeper I got into learning about music and I was a huge Tom Petty nerd, and I think the whole craft of becoming great at something I was really more obsessed with. Having great songs was something that really mattered to me. And the idea of getting a bunch of adoration from masses of people, that whole idea, that was kind of more of a youthful idea, maybe, I think, that started to dissipate. And of course you want to connect with a large crowd, but yeah, when I first started, I don't think I had a clear vision. I think I just knew I'm all in on everything. I want to write songs. I want to perform songs. I want to go on the road. I want to, go be on the cover of, whatever, Country Weekly, whatever. But then I started to find, the little doors that opened and, okay, this feels like me and this not so much. So it was just constantly chipping away at the block. And yeah, that the idea of what I want to do is continually, even to this day, continues to morph into, I think what the true north is for me.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that too. Cause I think that probably ties really well into your new project based on what I read. Right.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. So how long were you in Nashville? Like 13 years, you said?
Yeah. 06. And then, we moved the family back to Kansas in 18, but I still had we still had our house there. So I was kind of teetering on, are we going to pull the trigger on this or not? And then in 2019, we started building a house here in Kansas. And that's when it was like, all right.
Dude, I love the pictures you post of where you guys live. It just seems so peaceful.
Man, it really is. Thanks. We got really lucky. My wife's family farms, and her dad has some land. He sold us 5 acres just north of the farm, like a mile north of the farm. And it's beautiful. If you're into, there's no mountains and whatever. There's a creek behind the house, but it's just wide open space as far as you can see.
I told you before we started recording that I love Kansas. I've only been there 3 or 4 times, and they've all been hunting trips in November, but I love it out there. I love the mountains. I like a lot of things, right? I like everything from the mountains to the tropics I like any wild place that's peaceful and has something there for me to enjoy. And Kansas is like the whitetail hunting place. I've whitetail hunted all over the country, and that's still my favorite place. I just think it's cool, and I think the culture's cool. I think the people are really nice. I think it's just kind of moves at a different pace in some of those rural communities, and I like that. I always have loved farm country. I think there's something peaceful about looking like at a sunset in like a wheat field or a cornfield or whatever the field is. There's something peaceful about that. I don't know what it is, but
very serene.
So I have a lot of respect for Kansas. I think prairie is cool, man. Like it really is
cool. It's fun. I never thought I'd end up back here, not because I didn't want to, just I didn't see it happening. You know, I was so deep into living in Tennessee, and I didn't have any idea we were going to move back here, but I'm glad we did. I love it.
And how old are you?
I'm 37.
Okay. Yeah. I think we also talked about this before the podcast, but I can relate to that.
What are you? How old are you?
I'm 42. I'm a little older than you, but we moved back to Oregon in 2019. I worked at a company called Sitka Gear, which is a hunting clothing company. I was one of the first employees there. So I was there for 11 years, and we lived in California when we first started the company till we sold the company, moved it to Bozeman, et cetera, et cetera. But I never thought I'd move back to Oregon either, dude. I think there's something that the reason I asked you how old you are is I think there's something that happens towards the middle of your life where like you spend your whole childhood just wanting to get the hell out of where you're from. And then about the middle, you're like trying to get back to where you came from as fast as you can, because I don't know. It's just things change, like your priorities change. And, you know, like my parents and her parents, my wife's parents, knowing our kids became the priority. My career was no longer the priority. Like we had kids that I wanted them to know their grandparents. Plus, for some reason, I found this weird love of the place I came from, where for many, many years I had lost that, or maybe I just didn't realize how kind of cool where I came from was. I don't know. It's weird. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah. It's the things that you look over or take for granted and things you want to escape become and the whole time I was in Nashville, it's like you're writing songs. I'm kind of romanticizing a lot about where I came from and who I grew up around. And because you're not going to write songs about living in the city with a bunch of people who want to be famous and country stars. That's what I had to pull from. And next thing you know, I'm living back here and kind of getting to live in the songs that you're writing. So
when you were in Nashville, what was your takeaway from that culture? I love I love Nashville. I think it's a fun city. I try to go there a couple times a year, maybe record some songs. I have a lot of friends there, but I can't see myself really enjoying, because I just know what a town like that will attract. And there's many, many good people, a billion amazing artists, but there's also a bunch of people that my priorities just don't align with their priorities, you know? Like, did you go away from there being like, I enjoyed that. That was great. I'm good. I just want to go home. Or like, do you resent it? Do you what's your feelings about the whole experience there and kind of that dream that so many people think and chase, right? Famous, money, all about me, spotlight, I'm going to be the next Kenny Chesney or whoever. And now that you've walked away and looked back on it, like what's your outlook on that?
No resentment at all. There's a lot of people that get bitter and sour. They have this dream. It doesn't work out the way they envision in their head, and they can get a little bit bitter. I mean, I remember when I signed my first record deal at Sony, there was kind of this guy that kept trolling me. He thought I was part of the Illuminati or something, that I had taken some oath, and, it was like, dude, I just was on the road and got a record,
Right.
So those people exist, and I feel bad because, that town is not out to, that town will eat you alive, but they're not out to get you, the great thing, it's a machine, and they're there to create, superstars that create, a name for the genre, put a face on a song, whatever. The things that I took away from Nashville, I kind of surrounded myself with a really good group of people. There's a publishing company called Big Yellow Dog. I've been with them since 2010. And Carla Wallace, who runs that, like her primary focus is hit songs. What songs make you feel something? She just innately knows it within the first 30 seconds of hearing it. We click on that. So we just sit in an office sometime and listen to songs. She'll send me songs. I'll send her songs. We just have this fascination with great songwriters. And so that was really cool for me because so many other people are focused on how do you get, your streams up? How do you get, your TikTok going? And those are important things. They're tools, but they're not the core of what this is all about. What this is about is finding great songs that connect with people and make you feel something. So I had her in my corner, and Carrie O'Neill, who run Big Yellow Dog, and just a great group of friends. And then the musicians who make the hits on radio. These songwriters bring the songs in, and these musicians are so dedicated to, the guitar player that's his whole life is song reading. He can play anything you want him to play, however you want him to play it. That was fascinating to me. And then also the songwriters, obviously, people who are just dedicated to, I don't think most of them are sitting there. Sure, there's some people who are like, I'm going to move to Nashville. I'm going to get rich writing number one songs. That's a thing for sure. But there are so many more people, I think, in the songwriting community there who are really just trying to express themselves and write the best song possible. And I admire that a lot. There's just so many talented people. And you can get caught up in the other thing, the machine, right? But there's way more good than there is bad, I think.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I think, every industry has its dark underbelly, and, those bitter people will always try to blame it on the town or blame it on the record labels or blame it on this or that. When at the end of the day, we're all, it's harder to take accountability, but it makes the rest of your life easier if you can just accept the fact that it didn't work out and move on. And at the end of the day, I don't spend most of my time in the music industry. I spend it in the hunting industry. But at the end of the day, if you just realize these people at these high levels of any industry are just trying to do their job, the guy at the at Sony who is in charge of finding new talent, he probably has a family and a lifestyle to pay for and kids and everything else, and he'll get fired if he doesn't perform. So
absolutely,
he's got to kind of be a dick. Actually, he has to be a dick because, like we said earlier, there's thousands of people in that town that absolutely think they're as good as whoever that's on in filling the stadiums, and the reality is they're mostly not, and maybe there's a few that they miss here and there, but their job is it's actually a pretty hard job. It sounds pretty stressful to me. I wouldn't want it. And so, but if you think about it like that, it's like, hey, it's not about me. It's just about they're just trying not to get fired just like everybody else.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's any, I'm sure there are some, there's competition, most of it healthy. I think there's some malicious people who are like, I've heard Joe Rogan talk about it where he's like, they have this, starvation. I don't know. I can't even remember what he calls it, but it's like, if this person's having success, they're taking success away from me. A lot of people get caught up in that, and you can't look at it that way at all. It's everyone, there's enough for everybody. And if you get good enough at what it is you want to do, and what you're doing and how you're going to do it, there's an open lane for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you move back, and based on some stuff I read, the whole time you were there, you kind of found yourself writing songs about this lifestyle you grew up with in Kansas, right? And so talk to me about the Prairieville project.
Yeah, I started writing. So I met a guy named Blake Chaffin. Actually, he was one of my first co-writes in Nashville when I first signed with Brett Jones at my first publishing company, my first publishing deal. And he introduced me to Blake. Blake had been playing lead guitar for one of his other writers, Joanna Smith, at the time. And Joanna went on, she was at MCA for a while, and I think she's in the military now, but or a contractor for the military. great songwriter, great person, but he was playing guitar for her. I got introduced to Blake. He came over. We wrote a song at the publishing company, and we hit it off. He's from Hays, Kansas, and I'm from Clearwater. You know, we're 2-3 hours apart growing up, and we just kind of struck up this kinship. Every time he kind of called our language windmill. We both speak windmill, is how he says it, which I think is funny. And all the songs had this, we kind of started noticing they had this theme that were very, that we spoke our own little language. There's little, whether it was phrasing or little things that were said a certain way. And we were both aware of it. And all the stuff we were turning into our publishing companies was just a little bit different, I think, than the typical, like,
now, when you were writing those songs, though, was that your intention, or were you trying to? So for your publishing deal, just to clear, I just have a question on that.
Yeah.
Are they expecting you to write Logan? You write Logan stuff, and we'll see if it'll fit some artist, or are they saying, hey, Dierks Bentley's got a album coming up? Where, like, are they giving you assignments, or are they like, how's it working with your pub deal?
The way that I've kind of figured out because I met with, after I lost my first publishing deal, I met with every publishing company that I knew of on Music Grow several times, got turned down from all of them. And I learned a lot through meeting with them. There are some who will do specific assignments. Here's a chart of who's cutting right now. We want you to write a Reba song or whatever. And that's still a thing. But that was never how it was presented to me at Big Yellow Dog with Carla. Hers was just like, go write great songs and they'll find a home. And so that was my approach the whole time. I was never writing for anyone specific, not even me, maybe. I was just trying to get whatever was in here that I had, whatever natural creativity was coming out. Let's just do that. And so Blake and I kind of figured out we had this niche, and it was like 2011, I think, when we were talking, and I was kind of into this. There's an author, her name's Willa Cather. She wrote O Pioneers and Death Comes for the Archbishop. She's from Nebraska, and she had a lot of like really, very Great Plains themed type books. And there was made up characters that were based on people she grew up around in Red Cloud, Nebraska. And I thought that was cool. And so I was like, we should make up a town from Kansas, and we should just start writing about the people and places and whatever. And let's call it Prairieville. We didn't even think about the name, didn't know there was a Prairieville, Louisiana at the time. So we just started writing songs about this fake town, and they're based around people we grew up with and whatnot. And we just started compiling this big group of songs about Prairieville. And we're like, someday we're going to make a record. And it took on so many different, at one point it was going to be an acoustic project where we just played everything ourselves. And there was like 50 songs, we wrote a ton of these Prairieville songs. But by the time we got to the end of it, like really going to do it, I hesitated on just putting out a bunch of songs around a single concept, because I just wanted it. I liked the theme, and I wanted the best songs to win. I didn't want to necessarily try to dive too deep into a story, because the more deep into the story we got, I found that it detracted from some of the better songs that were more universally themed. Mm-hmm. So kind of took the idea back, picked the best 12 songs, period, hoped they tied together in some fashion. And that's how Prairieville came about when I recorded it in, 2021? I think we finally recorded it. And it came out in 21.
It came out in 21.
I think. Was it? Yeah, it was October of 2021, I believe.
Gotcha. So you have a new project coming out soon based off of your Instagram. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the Prairieville thing was very songwritery. I mean, it was as much as I wanted the best songs to win, and I wanted to have a lot of universal themes on there, it was still very niche for me. Like, and it wasn't received as well as some of the albums I've put out in the past. Not like negatively, just didn't get a big response from it. I think there was some weird thing. I love 80s production. So you have these kind of Great Plains singer-songwritery stuff with some synth stuff going. And it was very much, if I'm going to make a record, this is how I want it to sound. This is what I want to do. I don't know that it connects with a large audience. And so I kind of wanted to go back and just find great songs and work with my producer, Dan. No theme at all. Just what are the best possible songs that we can find. I love 3-minute pop songs. I love Elton John, Tom Petty, Mellencamp. And so it's not really, there's no theme. It's just what are the best songs we can find. And that's kind of where we started. And we started with, there's a Muscadine Bloodline cover. Every Day That Ends in Y is one that we recorded. The song Bloodline, my friend Randy Montana wrote. And that's another thing I learned along the way, which is a whole different story, is, when I first started, I thought I had to write all my own songs. And Paul Worley, I got, when I was at Sony, I recorded a project with him that never came out. And he had this long talk with me. He's like, look, you can write songs. That's good. He's like, and you can sing and whatever. He's like, your thing is that you're a communicator, and that when you do something, it's believable. It sounds honest. And he's like, maybe it's because, you really sound genuine when you're doing this. He's like, that's your strength. Focus on that. Who cares if you wrote it? If you can beat it with your own writing, do it. If you can't, don't turn down a great song because you didn't write it. Be the communicator. That's your strength. And so I kind of buckled down on that. And that's when I really embraced that. That's when I really started to kind of get some traction and have some success and take your ego out of the mix. Just record the best song.
Is that where Better Off Gone?
Yeah.
Did you write that or no?
No, that was Donovan Woods and Abe Stoklosa. I'm probably mispronounced his last name. I always do that. And I know Abe really well, but yeah, that was Donovan Woods and Abe. And Carla found that song and she sent it to me and she said, this is a couple of people have tried to record this. It didn't quite work for them. I was like, that's a really cool song. And I'm going to give it a shot. And when we put that, it was on the 2017 Comeback Road album. It's real acoustic based. It's the last song I thought that was going to really strike a chord with people, with listeners. And, my friend Daniel Tashin had told me early on, he's like, hey man, you're kind of a big guy. You go out there, you start doing all this, try to get in people's faces, rock, do the abrasive thing. It's not going to work for you. He's like, people are going to enjoy the more vulnerable side of you. That's where you're going to find success. And he was right, because that was the first song that really found a big audience for me. And so I found from that point forward, kind of the more vulnerable, heartfelt, maybe slow to mid-tempo songs are the things that I've really had success with. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what's interesting for me is that's the first song I ever heard. And I don't know if that's because it was on, maybe it made more playlists. Therefore I heard it just naturally through something else I was listening to or whatever, but I love that song. And I also love, Ain't Always Pretty. Mm-hmm. Which is another similar acoustic-y love song. Actually, the acoustic version I think is rad.
Thanks.
Yeah, man. That's interesting. So you probably, did you think you were going to be kind of an upbeat guy? And not that you're not, but in terms of connecting with people.
Yeah, I wanted to be like Petty or Mellencamp, Heartland rocker type, and you can hear that in a lot of there's an album that came out in 2009. I'm not super proud of it. I was 21 when I wrote most of the songs. It's kind of, I was figuring it out. Still didn't know how to sing, in the studio or sing, period. But right after that period was when I started kind of self-producing a lot of stuff. And I was taking in a lot of solo rights to the studio and recording with my road band. And there's a project called From the Vault, I think, that a lot of those songs are on. There's a song called Used Up that was on there. Can't Get Away From a Good Time was on there. And that stuff was all kind of what I felt like what I was going to do is kind of be this roots rock kind of thing. And, it just never really found, I had my own little fan base with it, but it never really got any legs. And I don't know that that's who I was. I was trying to emulate. I was trying to be Tom Petty. I wasn't trying to be me. And so it's really important to figure out, who it is you really are in here before you can just, yeah, it's cool to go emulate Tom Petty or Mellencamp, but I don't know if that was really, my thing. So
It's challenging though for most of us because we don't think we're cool, right? We know for a fact that Petty's cool and Mellencamp's cool, so it's almost like this weird insecurity we all have. Even if you're not an artist, most people have the same insecurity where you don't think your life's unique, you don't think your life's interesting, you don't think it's a story, but the reality is like. And I try to tell people this on the entrepreneurship side too, because I work with a lot of startup companies or whatever. But like, the more you realize that you are truly a unique individual that's never existed before and that will never exist again, and be okay just knowing that you do have an interesting story. Mm-hmm. And when you finally can figure out a way to tell that story through, whether it's through your business, your brand, or your song, people can smell that and they sense it. And then that is when you find your personal magic. And that's when you're like, oh, people actually like it when I write songs like for Logan Mize, not for Logan Petty, I think that's kind of cool when you can come to that realization. Also, it gives you confidence, man. Right.
Confidence. It's also scary too, right? Like if we're going to be completely honest and vulnerable about it, because there's a sense of, I'm doing this thing that I know is cool. I'm trying to be a part of that. But when you're opening yourself up to like, I'm going to be I'm going to be my true self here, it can be pretty scary because, you're really putting yourself out there and you don't know how that's going to be received. Because like you said, I never thought of, Logan Mize is really cool. I was like, I'm just this guy who really wants to go play music and I'll just do this thing that I've seen, I'll be the parrot,
Yeah, it's really scary. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But it's just like anything else that's scary. Once you kind of push yourself through that fear and realize like, and I don't know, I'll ask you this question. When you finally started doing that more, the fears that you had in the back of your mind, did any of them come true? Like where people are like, dude, don't do that. You're not cool.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody somewhere YouTube comment thread did. I didn't see it.
Yeah, don't listen to those idiots.
The fear, like once you figure out there's nothing to be scared of, then it's like, there's no fear left. But yeah, at first it is. It's there's still so many songs that I feel like are really okay. This is really me, and I still get that nervous feeling of like, am I ready to open up that much? It's a weird thing.
Do you ever whip out brand new songs and shows and say, screw it, I'm going to try it and see how people react? Or do you kind of hold on to them until you have a level of comfort that they're any good?
I will. I've tried it. So if I'm playing acoustic shows, I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Full band shows, not so much, just because there's a level of rehearsal you want to get everybody sounding right on. But I've done it before. And sometimes there was a song called Albuquerque that I put on a little acoustic project I did last year, and my friend Colton Vinard written that song with Ben Danaher, and I just couldn't stop playing it. I love the song. I was like, man, I know this is a great song. I just want to see how it comes across. So I was on stage in Idaho playing an acoustic show last summer, got up and played that song, and I got this huge reaction. I was like, I knew this song was good, and so I recorded my own version. And then there's times you go up there and you think this one's really cool, I'm going to try it out, and there's nothing.
You're like, okay, never going to play that again.
You see people going to get a beer, or the audience noise picks up because they're talking amongst themselves.
Oh, yeah. You just want to stop halfway through and just switch to like something else to pick it back up. Yeah. At what point along the way, because your wife also is a musician, has a beautiful voice. At what point did you guys meet, and when did that happen? In Nashville?
Yeah, we met in Nashville. It was 2008 or 9. She had just moved there. She was working at a hospital. She's a sonographer, and I knew of her. I'd actually, when she lived in Kansas and I was framing houses in Wichita, she was doing ultrasound school. I'm not sure it's either sonography school or whatever, here in Wichita at Newman University. And one of her friends that she was going through that school with, I framed her house. So her friend, I think Ginger was her name, whatever. And through this the people I was framing with her, they said, hey, there's this girl named Jill. She's wants to move to Nashville eventually. You guys should link up. Here's her number. I think I threw it away. She said the same thing happened to her. She threw my number away. Like, no one ever tried to reach out to each other. And then fast forward, like maybe 3 or 4 years later, I kind of maybe reached out to her on Facebook or something, like, hey, well, I heard you moved to town. Good luck or whatever. And then that was it. And then I was playing a show at, I think it's now called Jason Aldean's, but at the time it was Cadillac Ranch. And she was there with her boyfriend. And I was like, oh, hey, thanks for coming to my show. And she's like, I didn't know you were playing here. I just happened to walk in. And that was kind of weird. And then it kind of turned into, well, do you want to write a song? And we got together to write. And then next thing you know, it was like, I guess we're dating. And yeah. And then married, kids, the whole thing. So it was it wasn't a plan. It wasn't anything we had planned on at all.
Do you guys tour together?
As much as possible. We've done some long stints where when my daughter Violet was just born, we all got in the bus and we were out for a month, I think. And that was a wild time. But yeah, as much as we can, with the kids being in sports and active in school stuff, it's tougher now. But that's the ultimate dream, is that we can tour together, when the kids are moved away.
Dude, you guys sound awesome together, man. I'd go to that show.
Thank you.
Freaking great. And is she recording her own projects too?
Yeah, she's been working on she's been writing a lot and working on something. We're working on a project called the Mizes right now too. We've written some of that. And so trying to put together the sessions for that and figure out how we're going to launch it. And yeah, we've always working on some kind of project. So yeah, she's a great songwriter too, and such a better singer than I am. She just naturally can do it, man. I feel like it's still work for me, and she's pitch perfect, and it comes really natural to her, which is why I keep pushing her, like, hey, I could just be your background guy. I'll play guitar and sing harmonies. You be the front person.
Yeah. So, yeah. She's pretty incredible. So dude, you've lived like such an unconventional, cool life, and you got a lot of life left to live, obviously, but there's a lot of people that listen to my show that are kind of hanging on the edge. They might be depressed, anxious, unhappy about their lives, and they've always wanted to do, not necessarily music, anything. They have this thing that they've always wanted to do. What has been your biggest learnings from sort of taking that risk and actually doing something that, like, most people that want to do it will never do it?
Man, I think the depressed, anxious, hanging on, but I think that's more common. I think, first of all, we got to admit that that's way more common than anyone's willing to admit. I mean, I've been there 100 times. I think that's a loaded question. There's so many things I can think of to say, but putting yourself out of your comfort zone, quit thinking. Action always is going to, if you're stuck in a cycle where you're thinking too much, just stop and just put it into action and see what happens. It's like, I love to do woodworking, and this is just a small example of, sitting there and trying to, get my cuts perfectly. How is this going to come together? The second I stop thinking about it and just start making the cuts, putting it together, take it apart 5 times, the action always leads to it getting done. The project always gets done. If I overthink it, it sits there and it finally just eventually ends up on a shelf, and then I'm mad about it. Mm-hmm. I think life is kind of like that. It's just jump in and start doing it. Who cares what anybody thinks? You're going to get it wrong 100 times. Just come to terms with that. You're going to screw up. You're going to make yourself look like an idiot. Who cares? What's the worst that's going to happen? And so, but the mental health thing, man, I think a lot more people struggle with that than we talk about.
Oh yeah, for sure. I talk about it pretty openly. So I get a lot of direct messages where they're like, "Don't tell anybody," but I feel the same way, and it's like more than I would have even thought. But a lot of it's centered around. There's many reasons it's complicated, right? But the most common theme that I get is because I live a pretty unconventional professional life as well.
I was going to say your life seems pretty cool, man.
Yeah, dude, I love my life. Like, I'm so thankful for everything. But one of the reasons I have it, other than just luck and being born to parents that loved me and all that stuff, which I had no control over, is the things that I have had control over are just it's that blind ignorance and just action. Like even this podcast, I didn't know I was going to start a damn podcast. Even 12 months ago, I didn't even, well, actually 12 months ago, I did know, but 14 months ago, I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I know cool people. I like talking to people. I'll start a podcast. I don't know how to do it. Okay, Google, how do you start a podcast?
Right.
And that's how music was for me. I'm doing jujitsu now. That's how jujitsu is for me. Hunting was different because I was born into it. So it's just part of my life, and it always has been. So, but generally speaking, I think I'm kind of happy I wasn't born the most book smart, intellectual person, because I think I would have overthought it. I kind of like having like an average level of intelligence and just being able just to say, screw it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? So I start a podcast. Okay. I talk to a bunch of cool people. Great. There's conversations documented forever that my kids could listen to. That's awesome. I look at music the same way. So I go record a song that, a few thousand people listen to over the course of its life. So I still recorded a song. I got to go do that and have that experience. And someday my kids can be like, hey, that's my dad.
Yeah.
Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I think people, especially men, because my podcast is mostly listened to by a lot of men. They are absolutely petrified by fears that are mostly and or entirely manufactured when it comes to like worst case scenarios. The fears about, it might suck. Yeah, it for sure is going to suck. I might fail. Yeah, you're for sure going to fail. Like, there's a lot of fears that are true, but they're not as bad as they think they are. Right. But like music to me, man, this is why I love musicians and songwriters, especially. Like, it takes so much courage to do what you do. And it took, well, it does, like, especially in the beginning. But even now, you said you still get nervous. I tried to explain that to somebody the other day. They asked me, because I haven't played for that many people. Maybe the most I've ever played for live is 1,000 or 1,500 people. But I said, were you nervous for that? And I said, absolutely not. I'm way more nervous if my wife asked me to play a new song, or if like my musician buddy's like, all right, dude, show me what you got. I'll be like, oh shit, I better not suck.
Yeah, man. 20,000 people. Who cares? Go out there and just rock. 4 people in a room. They're like, hey, play us that new song. It's like, well, let me have a panic attack real quick. And dude, I'm the same way. I think it's perfectly normal for fear to control a lot of your decision making, and it's so hard to get past that. You talked about podcasting and hunting in particular. I've been wanting to start this podcast. I even built this table right here for it, that I want to have here in Andale, where I invite songwriters and other creative types to come, write a song and hang out and start the podcast. Well, I don't know anything about podcasting, and I'm scared about, what if people get here and then it's boring and they realize I'm terrible at hosting a podcast. And I've put this off now I moved in here in May, got that table done in September, and here I am in February of the next year, and I still am like, well, I don't know what interface I need. I'll just put this off till later. Or what camera do I buy? And so, fear of that being a failure, fear of that, me sucking at that. I put it off. Hunting. I've always been interested in hunting. I've been doing my hunter safety. It's not something I grew up with. My dad was just not a big hunter. He's into sports and stuff. So we always worked on that. And all my friends here, big hunters. And so I'll go out and go dove hunting with them or whatever in August. But I've always wanted to get into bow hunting. well, I'm going to look stupid. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I really want to get out there and I want to bow hunt and fill my freezer full of meat and be able to provide that for the family and provide that experience for my son who's now interested in hunting. But I've drugged my feet on becoming a hunter for so long because, well, I don't want to look dumb. I'm 37. These guys have been doing it since they were kids. I'm going to make a lot of rookie mistakes. So fear is natural. I think just, I need to stop being a pussy and put my big boy pants on and do it. You know,
we can solve your hunting fear really easily. I can help you with that. But I get it. One thing that's helped me, for anybody that resonated with, because I have all the same fears. I was scared shitless to do a podcast, was, I actually try to consciously do something I suck at all times. So right now it's jujitsu. Dude, you want to know something that will absolutely eat your lunch when you suck at it? Martial arts. Especially jujitsu, because you're getting choked out like 5 times a night, right? You're literally like within a minute or two of death at all times. And I come home and I'm like beat up and I'm sore. And my wife, my kids say every time, Daddy, did you finally submit somebody? And I'm like, nope. But I got choked out like 4 times. And they're like, when are you going to submit somebody? I'm like, look, you guys, I just this is one of those things where you literally suck for basically years. I mean, yeah, you get better and all those things. But what I tell them is like, I actually enjoy that because it makes me realize how how important it is to get out of your comfort zone and be challenged. Like it wakes my brain up a little bit, maybe kind of kicks me back into gear of just, because I'm like you, I have a couple things that I'm pretty good at and I do those a lot, and you get comfortable. You're like, this is what I do. Like your set when you get on stage, you guys can nail your set. I bet you can get up there with your band on any night of the week and frickin' kill it. Right. But the moment you got to go do something new, you got to be like, okay, I'm now not Logan Mize that's going to fucking kill it on stage. I'm now Logan Mize that's going to take my first shot at a deer with a bow.
Fall on my face.
Or fall out of a tree stand. Hopefully not. Let's get you a safety harness. But miss the deer or whatever. But that's totally fine. I don't know. I find it helpful just to do something you suck at all times. That's the point. And I have plenty of things I suck at, and so does everybody else, because there's no way that you can be good at everything or whatever. But I first of all, dude, you need to do that podcast. I've been waiting for someone to do a podcast like that. There's no, in my opinion, I haven't found a great songwriting podcast yet that I want to listen to that I thought was interesting.
Okay. Well,
and good. Think of all the amazing connections you have, and how cool would it be just to write a song on the spot, talk about the song you wrote, and then bullshit with the dude, and then they leave. There's probably people touring through Kansas all the time. I think you should just do it and say, screw it, man.
I think I probably will. It's just, pulling the trigger on it. And like I said, it's just, it'll sit on the shelf until it eats me alive. And then I got to do it. Speaking of, you were talking about jujitsu. I wrestled in high school. So, the jujitsu thing is seems so counterintuitive. In wrestling, you want to put somebody on their back. In jujitsu, a power position is fighting from your back. So I'm sure that would be nearly impossible to reverse my brain on how to do that. But
from what I've seen, so there's a couple schools of thoughts. My personal experience, which is very limited, so nobody read my YouTube that I don't know what I'm talking about. I think wrestlers have a huge advantage. There are a few things you got to totally rewrite your coding on. But when it comes to things like taking someone down, or just naturally knowing how to move your body and use leverage and stuff like that, you have experience doing that already. The wrestlers that are at my gym, they tend to move faster than I can because I didn't wrestle. I wish I would have. It's one of my main regrets from my younger years. I think wrestling's cool. But I have to now at 42 years old learn how to take somebody down. Right. Whereas you probably did it hundreds of times when you were a teenager. But things like that. But then, you don't want the idea, your brain's programmed to roll over on your stomach and get up on all fours. Don't do that, because you're going to get killed.
Right. And you have to probably trust the people you're training with too. if you're getting choked out, you got to trust that when you tap, they're going to be like, all right, cool.
Yeah, it's so far. I've actually, one of my main concerns, and it still is injury. Like, I'm not doing this to prove I'm tough to anybody. I'm not doing I'm not even doing it because I think I'm actually going to have to use it on the street someday. I hope I don't. Yeah. I'm doing it because I like to try things that I've know nothing about that are extremely challenging, and for the fitness aspect, it's like great workout. And also it builds confidence, man. Like knowing that you know how to defend yourself, even if you never have to use it. But one of the cool things about what I've found so far is 99% of the people that are there they're there and they're on your team. Like they're not trying to hurt you. If they are trying to hurt you, they're a douchebag, and they should be kicked out of the gym, because that's not the point. Like, as soon as you tap, they should let go. And I tap. I'm not one of these guys that like holds on.
Yeah.
I have nothing to prove. As soon as I feel it, I tap. Like
the second I felt my elbow going back, man, I'm like, I'm out.
That's what I do. And my buddy who does it as well, he's like, dude, you need to try to hold on a little bit longer. I'm like, why, dude? I have nothing to prove to this random Joe at the gym. Right. What I want, I got to have my arms and my legs for the other stuff that I do. I'm not here to prove anything to anybody. Although I am, Logan. Outdoor Class is the new source of premium outdoor education from trusted and knowledgeable experts. For hunters committed to improving their skills, Outdoor Class is the only subscription-based e-learning platform that provides unlimited access to video lessons from the world's most respected experts. Learn from industry leaders like Corey Jacobson, Randy Newberg, Remy Warren, and other experts across all the topics that affect you as a hunter. Make sure to follow Outdoor Class Official on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and take your game to the next level by going to outdoorclass.com. You can use code ALTITUDE at checkout for 20% off. That is ALTITUDE at checkout for 20% off at outdoorclass.com. I'm going to do a competition here in a couple months, which I'm talking about nervous and fearful and like,
dude, that's awesome though.
Petrified.
Yeah. That's a good feeling though.
It is. I'm like, shit, man, I'm going to do it. I don't know what's going to come of it, but I'm going to do it. And luckily it's against other white belts that are similar age and weight as I am. But no, so far, dude, it's very friendly. If you have a gym nearby, you should just go try it. Just go in there for a couple nights and try it. You're built for it, dude. You'd probably just absolutely slay people.
I'd love to try it. And like you said, I don't care about slaying people. I like the challenge. I like the idea of the challenge, and I'm always looking out for fun ways to, stay in shape and whatnot. But I live like half hour from Wichita, and that's like I guess finding something in Wichita, and it's like playing on the hour a day drive. But I guess to a lot of people that's normal sitting in traffic.
Are you north, south, east, or west from Wichita?
I'm northwest of Wichita.
Oh, okay, so, dude. I bet you I've been through your. Trying to remember. I hunted a couple times about 2 hours northwest of Wichita.
Probably like Great Bend or something like that.
Where I don't. Yeah, Great Bend. That actually sounds familiar. Pratt.
And then there's Pratt, and then Kingman had. They still do. Sitco is a huge. So did you ever hear of Hooray Ranch?
Oh yeah, I never went there, but yeah, we sponsored that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So Hooray's like an hour west of where I'm at.
Okay.
And then Pratt's another, 30 minutes from there. So. Okay.
Yeah. My invitations for that one got lost in the mail apparently because all my teammates got to go, but I never did.
Oh, shoot.
It's all good, man. I hunted, I think Great Bend, somewhere up in that area. I just don't remember. But again, it was freaking, I wish I could go there. I've always wanted to buy a lease in Kansas for whitetail and just make it like a yearly thing, but they become more popular and harder to find, a little bit more expensive. So until I have that hit song, blow up, I can't afford the Kansas lease.
So what's your day look like? How are you structured? Because you're in so many things. You're a creative guy. You do music. You're a good businessman. You do your podcast. Like, are you pretty good at setting up your day? And you have kids. You're a dad. So, like, what does your day look like as far as how you're doing jujitsu? Yeah,
I'm pretty good at at managing my time, but I also suck at it at the same time. But what I've learned over the course of the year, I had a boss about 10 years ago tell me something that at the time I thought he was being a dickhead and he didn't understand what I was going through. But as I've gotten older, it's 1000% true, which was spend your time pulling the big levers and leave the small ones alone.
Oh, interesting.
He's like, if you just worry about pulling only the big levers and just, you got to be able to let stuff flow, let stuff go, you will get more done. So, but at the time when I was at Sitka, I was like buried in like, 300 emails a day and this or that small problem. But he's like, F all that, man. Like, what are your 5 biggest things that you should be working on that have the biggest impact on the business? Focus on those things. And then if you can get through those things, worry about the 50 emails that are total nonsense that could be solved just by that person thinking, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, fast forward, that was probably 10 years ago when he told me that. I kind of just wake up in the morning and like write down the 4 or 5 most important things that I have. Like this morning I had to consciously do it. I almost didn't do it, but I'm glad I did. But like, and then if I have time, I'll get to the stuff that is going to be okay. And I have to do that because I own a real estate business, a land company in Oregon. I part owner in a gear company in Montana. I have the podcast. I have all these things going on, family, husband, I guess by nature of surviving, I had to figure out how to do it all. But here's the thing, Logan, I'm also not worried about being the greatest at any of those things. And I think that is a difference, because if I wanted to try to be the greatest songwriter of all times, which wouldn't be, I couldn't probably accomplish that, but I would have to get rid of some stuff. Right. But I've always been a little bit more interested in having multiple adventures than being the greatest at something. And some people think that's stupid. I like it because I think it keeps it interesting. Like this morning I woke up and I was working on, the first thing I was working on was like a huge proposal on a ginormous listing my land company might get, right? That I've been working on. I probably got 40 hours into this proposal.
Wow.
And then I'm, jumping straight to, we're setting a booth up in Salt Lake right now. I'm flying out in less than 12 hours to go work at my gear company, my hunting gear company, And then when I got this podcast, after this podcast, I got to record a monologue podcast that I'm doing every week, like a journal entry type thing. So I guess point being, I have to figure out ways to just focus on the stuff that matters the most. And I have stuff fall through, dude. Like I make mistakes every day. And it drives my wife crazy because she is a teacher and she's very detail oriented and checks every box and dots every I. And I'm just not, dude. I'm just not. But I also spent money and hired an assistant. I hired a bookkeeper. I hired like a transaction coordinator on the real estate side, a principal broker on the real estate side. Like I have a lot of people, and I tell them when I hire them, I'm like, your job is to walk behind me and pick up the pieces, because I just don't focus on that stuff. And that's why I'm paying you. So, and I'm honest with myself. That's just the way it is, but I'm not perfect at all, dude. I struggle every day with, sometimes I just throw everything down and go take a walk or take a nap too. I'm like, screw it. I can't handle all of it. I don't even know what I'm going to do.
That's exciting though, man. It's cool to have so many things going. I've been so singularly focused on, just recording music and playing the show that I think I'm kind of, and I think maybe that's the podcast and everything I was talking about is like having some variety, that seems exciting to me.
After I got done at Sitka, so when I was at Sitka, it was a singular focus. I mean, I was writing songs and stuff like that as a hobby, but I was singularly focused on that part, like building that company and hunting. Yeah. And when I left there, I hit like a major wall and a major low in my life. And it wasn't because of them or the brand. It was because I had too much of my identity wrapped up into it. And I didn't know who I was outside of David from Sitka. And that was a mind blowing experience to like, be like, who the fuck am I? Like, I don't work there anymore. Like, who am I? What do I do? How do I talk? Where do I live? And And so one of the decisions I made after I kind of cleaned up that mess was I never just want to do one thing ever again.
Yeah.
Because I value the adventure more than being the greatest thing that's ever happened to one thing. I guess for me, that's what I value. I value, like, I was excited to talk to you, and I love doing this podcast. It gives me another purpose, and I think, and just gratitude that I can even, get up every day and work on projects I've created. I have a friend that's, like, we just found out, who's dying of cancer, and she's 42. And literally out of nowhere, felt fine, healthy, beautiful, kids, husband, dying. So like, you get stuff like that start happening in the middle of your life too. And you're like, man, starting a podcast doesn't seem all that scary anymore. You know?
Oh God, man. Yeah. I hate stories like that.
I do too. And I hate even mentioning it. It's like a downer, but it's the truth. It's like, I guess I'm kind of more awake than ever. The last several years of, like, if I'm not going to start a podcast now, when am I going to do it? My next life?
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
And what? Even if it fails, no one's ever going to remember if it's successful, and no one's ever going to remember if it fails. Like, we're all going to die someday, and all of the things we're doing are only going to be special, mostly, unless you're like among the few, like the Rogans or whoever. Most of the stuff we do are pretty much only going to be special to the people that we impacted and our family, right? Mm-hmm. So the haters, the people that care about watching you fail, they're all going to die someday too. And when they die, all of their hate for you and what you've done, and like their doubts, they're dead too. No one's ever going to remember that. So I'm like, you know what? I'll create impact with who I can. And my music's the same way, dude. Like, I've taken all kinds of heat from even friends on the music side, where they're like, yeah, I just can't take you seriously unless you live in Nashville. It's like, well, then go piss off, man. Like, I don't need you to take me seriously. I didn't ask for you to take me seriously. I enjoy writing songs. I love recording songs. I love playing live, and that's all I need. So I'm not asking for anybody's approval. Sure. Would I like a song to blow up? And sure. Why not? That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Do I need it to happen? Also, no, I don't. And so I guess that's my perspective. It's people might look at it like it's kind of a screwed up perspective, but that's my perspective on it.
No, that's their problem though, man. If you're happy doing what you do and enjoying it and inspiring your kids and your wife and your circle around you, man, that's all that matters. And
I've found that when people, it's kind of like dating, dude. Like, I didn't finally meet my wife until I stopped caring about, like, I kind of just changed my perspective. I'm like, you know what? This is also stupid. I'm just going to, like, not even look for it. And then boom, pops out of nowhere. Right. People
How
like
old were
it.
You?
I was 25.
Okay. Yeah.
People like it. People, like, when it comes to whatever project you're working on, for me, like my music, my number, this is one of the reasons I love what you're doing. When I've only recorded, a dozen songs professionally in my life, but the ones that I thought were the most broad spectrum, like, this one's cool, this one could be on the radio for sure, people liked them but didn't really care. The moment I actually wrote something that actually is truly me and, like, pretty niche, automatic 10x results. This happened with my song Altitude. When I released that, I wrote it and I like basically threw it away. I didn't even want to record it because I didn't think anybody would care. And I was driving through Montana one day looking up the mountains, and I was thinking about that song because I was trying to figure out something to record next. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to take a flyer and see if anybody relates to this. And I recorded it, and it's like 10x the best song I've ever released, and probably the cheapest too. Like, I just did it with my buddy Zach Swan at his computer in his closet in Nashville, and it was great, and then you go spend $2,500 on another song that you think this one's for sure going to be good, and no one cares. Right. So you just don't know. But the only thing I can boil it down to is like, again, just trying to be unapologetically you and just see what happens. That's the greatest adventure that I think is anywhere. It's just
absolutely, man.
You
and
know?
It's tough to get there too, you know, but, and for me, it's taken, God, I'm so thankful that this didn't work out for me when I was 21 years old and my first record came out. My first record came out when I was 23, an independent thing. And I think about that. And then I got my first record deal at Sony. I'm so thankful that none of that just put me in a place that I didn't need to be. You know, it's such a better feeling being 37 and going like, okay, I think I have my feet under me now. You know, now I know what to do with this. Now I know what matters, what's important. And now I know how to authentically be myself, I think. And I feel like I was a late bloomer in that regard, you know? So
with Sony, so have you had multiple record deals or was it just with Sony?
Yeah, I was at Atlantic after that for a short
wow,
stint.
man, those are like major deals.
It was a co-venture between Big Yellow Dog, my publishing company, and Atlantic, New York, and that's a whole other wild story. You mentioned Zach Swan before I get too far down from the Swan Brothers.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, yeah, we were on Sony at the same time. I love those guys.
Dude, they're like my best friends in the music industry. So everything I do, Zach produces.
Okay.
And Colton always plays on it when we go down to the Sound Emporium, and dude, they have been so genuinely good to me and like help me navigate, because I don't know how to navigate that machine. I'll be like, Zach, I have this song or this batch of songs. Just find the right people, help me set this up. You're producing it, and he does it all, and he genuinely takes the time and helps me rewrite little parts and all these things. And they've just been good friends, man. I can call Zach with anything. They're such good dudes and so talented too.
Yeah, they are talented, man, and just effortless. You know, they make performing look effortless. They're great singers. It's and Colton plays bass, if I remember right.
Yep.
So we did some shows together, and then obviously did a lot of like the Dog and Pony like radio kind of, you know, early morning things at hotel rooms and stuff that they make you do. But I always really like those guys.
Dude, you guys should, I don't know, do something, because
I need to reconnect with them.
Well, we should all get together and we can teach you how to whitetail hunt. Those guys they're from Oklahoma, and
so they're still in Nashville, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew they're from I'm going to mess it up. Are they from Miami, Oklahoma?
No, they're from Muskogee. Is that right?
Muskogee. I knew it was an M. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Great. Yeah, they both still live in Nashville, and they're still doing the thing. They don't have a deal right now, but they're just independently releasing all kinds of music, man.
That's awesome. And
not touring as much as they were. They're actually producing quite a bit.
Cool.
Zach has a studio at his house now, and he gets a lot of energy from producing. He loves producing people.
Yeah. I love that.
Have you tried doing that?
Yeah, I produced an album on a friend of mine, Jared Daniels, and then all of Jill's stuff I've produced so far, her 2 records, and then a lot of stuff early on I self-produced and whatnot. But you know, I'm not a good engineer. I'm not. My stuff is I'll hear things and I can kind of play it enough to where I can, you know, show the musicians what to do, and I can play acoustic in the studio along with the session. But
can you, dude? That's impressive. I would be petrified to try to play with those guys.
Acoustic's about all I've done. I've done a couple where I'll go in there and play like rhythm electric, you know, but it's fun. I love playing with them because everything's so tight.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I went down there, I was I had no idea, right, how good these guys were. And I called Zach because I just was trying to wrap my head around it. I'm like, hey, I'm going to bring my guitar. Do you want me to play on this thing? And he's like, dude, don't ever say that again. You're not touching you're not touching a guitar in the studio. I'm like, really? Yeah. And he's like, dude, trust me. When you get there, you're going to, I'm not being mean. He's like, just trust me. They're so good. Like, it would take you, 20 takes or whatever. It will take this guy 1. I'm like, okay, yeah, sounds great. I don't need to play, Yeah.
Yeah, they are good. And what I was doing at the time I was playing was not anything that's super complicated. If I needed a really good, like, chicken pick and acoustic player, I would call, B. James Lowry or one of those guys who is a real acoustic player. But now I love playing with them. It's just crazy to hear how fast they put something together. And you got a leg up because you wrote the song, so you know it front and backwards by the time they're just learning it.
Do you remember the first time you were sitting in the room and heard one of your songs come to life?
Yeah, I do. Trying to remember which song it was. It was probably a song that's on my first album, but I remember the band, and I remember being over at, I think it was called, I think it was the Cal 4 studio in Nashville. But man, it was like, it's just, you can't explain that experience to anybody and tell you that. I used to bring my parents out to come listen to session, and everyone's mind is just blown every time they hear those session players just launch into a song they don't even know. It's crazy.
Hold on. Sorry, Logan. I'm listening, but I have to answer this.
Oh, you're good, man. Go for it.
Podcast. Shit. This is one of the problems with juggling my life. I always screw up meetings and stuff like that. 12:30 on a podcast.
If you got to jump off here, man, go for it.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up here in a minute, but yeah. I'm really enjoying the conversation. I just got to, my if I don't respond to my assistant, this is her job. She'll get on my case. I'm on a podcast. No worries if we can't talk at 12:30, maybe later or tomorrow. Anyways, well, dude, how do people find everything that you're doing? Like, when does all this new music that I'm hearing, like little sound bites from, come out?
So there'll be, first single, I believe, is March 10th.
And which one is that? Is that Bloodline?
I think it's Bloodline. And it's either Bloodline or Another Right Now is what it's down to between the two. And then there'll be I think there's maybe two more come out. And then, one more comes out in April. And then EP drops in May, right about the time we start a tour. And we'll announce our tour here in the next few weeks, I think. And then the full album will probably be sometime in the summer. So,
what's the album called? Do you know yet?
Tentatively right now, I don't know. I was thinking about just calling it LM. I had like a self-titled album in 2009. This one I didn't have like I said, there was really no theme. I just wanted to stack it with the best songs I can. And we'll see. I have a big writing camp coming up next week or the week after where we're finishing writing the whole project. But tentatively titled LM. We'll see.
Dude, that's something that I've always wanted, and I'm going to do it. This is something that I've been putting on the back burner. I want to do a writing camp either out here in Oregon or in Montana at one of the beautiful mountain places that I have with all my Nashville friends or whatever, writer friends, and kind of combine like outdoorsy stuff. Maybe we should shoot some bows, shoot some guns, write some songs. I think that'd be rad.
Be so fun, man.
That's awesome, dude. I'm so stoked. I heard this morning on your Instagram, I heard part of Bloodline. That sounds like a really cool song. I'm a fan of everything you do. I'm a fan of what your wife does. I think you guys got a really rad story. And I appreciate you coming on today.
Dude, I appreciate you having me on. This was super fun, exciting. Kind of gets me fired up to do my own little podcast.
I want to see that podcast, man. Let's get it going. And I'll come down to Kansas and we'll record an episode and we can put it out on my platforms too.
I'd love it, man. I might have to I might have to get some advice on what cameras and what interface you use you use the Riverside thing, right? Is that?
Yep. Yeah. I can send you a list of I've gone through a few different setups and I'd be happy to help any way I can. Actually, it's funny because Zach Swan just texted me the other night. He's like, "Hey, I need to know what you got." So we're going to start a podcast. Okay, great.
Oh, cool.
I think it's great, man.
Heck yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Let's stay in touch, man. And, everybody, thank you for listening. Make sure you go check out Logan Mize. It's just Logan Mize on Instagram, right?
Yeah, I think so. M-I-Z-E.
He's got a pretty blue check next. You'll find him pretty quick. And let's see, Spotify, iMusic, all the different places you listen to music. He's got tons and tons and tons of followers on Spotify. Really impressive, the audience that you built. And his music's impressive. If you can catch any of his shows, he tours, maybe not as frequent as he used to, but he still does do quite a few live shows during the year. I have yet to be to one because you don't come out here much or ever, if I've seen.
We used to. We hit California hard, and Oregon and Washington, and then after COVID, we kind of haven't really ramped it back up. But we have our first West Coast run, I think, coming up in June. So we haven't announced it yet. So
I'm hoping to get to a show this year. It'd be rad, man. And let's stay in touch and keep grinding, man. We all love what you're doing.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.